So the relevant questions and answers of human eye and colorful world is being discussed. So the first question, the human eye can focus objects at different distances by adjusting the focal length of the eye lens. This is due to option A, presbyopia, B, accommodation, C, nearsightedness, and D, farsightedness. We know that the ability of eye lens to adjust the focal length so that the human eye can focus objects at different distances is called as accommodation of eye. So the correct answer is option B, accommodation. Second question, why is red color selected for danger signal lights? You are well aware that for danger signals, we use red color. Why is it so? Suppose if you are in a signal 2 of a traffic, you know that when a red color is being shown, you will be able to spot the red color even from far distances. It's because when we consider the spectrum of white light, including VIBGYOR from violet to red is the color which is having the highest wavelength. So, since the wavelength of red color is more or highest, it will be least scattered. And that's why it can be seen easily even from a large distance. That's the reason why red color is selected for danger signal lights. Which phenomenon is responsible for making the path of light visible? We know that scattering is a basic process that makes the path of light visible, and the particular phenomenon in which the path of light is visible is called as Tyndall effect. The fourth question, why do different components of white light deviate through different angles when passing through a triangular glass prism? We know that when white light passes through a triangular glass prism, there occurs the dispersion. And this happens, and finally white light splits into a band of colors and it bends at different angles. It is because due to the change in refractive index offered by the medium. Next question, why does the sky appear dark instead of blue to an astronaut? In case of space, we know that there is no atmosphere. There are no particles, air, gases or water droplets. Only if such particles are present, they will be able to scatter the light, isn't it? Since in space, such particles are not present, there will not be any scattering of light. So when the astronauts look at the sky in the space, no light will be entering their eyes since there is no scattering, no light there, and thus it will appear dark. Next question, arrange the constant colors of white light in the descending order of their wavelength. We know that the constituent colors of white light are VIBGYOR, violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange and red. That is the 7 colors. So, we know that violet is a color which is having least wavelength and red is a color which is having the highest wavelength. Since in the question it is asked to arrange them in the descending order, from the red we will arrange them to the violet. So, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo and violet. So, the second part is name the component of white light that deviates the least and the most while passing through a glass prism. So, we know that when white light passes through a glass prism, there occurs deviation, isn't it? So, that is the light which is bending or which is having the deviation least will be red color, and the one which is having more deviation will be the violet color. It is corresponding to the wavelength. The one which is having highest wavelength will be deviating the least and vice versa. A student has difficulty to read the blackboard while sitting in the last row. What could be the defect child is suffering from? How can it be corrected? We know that there is a defect of eye vision called as myopia. In myopia, or termed as nearsightedness, the person will be able to see the nearby objects clearly but can't see the far off objects clearly. So, the student is suffering from the eye defect called as myopia. In such a myopic person, he won't be able to see the far off objects. So, when a person is sitting in a distance from the blackboard, he will be able to see the nearby objects but he won't be able to read the blackboard which is at a distance from him. So such a defect can be corrected by using concave lens. Next question, what happens to the image distance in the eye when we increase the distance of object from the eye? On increasing the distance of the object from your eye, what happens is the focal length of the eye will change. And which is the main thing that is responsible for changing of the focal length? It is the ciliary muscles that led to the change of the focal length of the eyes. So, the image distance in the eye will remain the same, but the focal length of the eyes change due to ciliary muscles. And this helps the eyes to focus the image on the retina. Next question, what is meant by spectrum of white light? How can we recombine the components of white light after a prism has separated them? And draw a diagram to illustrate it. We know that when a white light passes through a glass prism, we get a spectrum on the other side, isn't it? That is, this white light splits into a band of colors. So, what is meant by spectrum of white light? The colored pattern, which includes the Whiptier colors, formed by a prism by splitting the incident white light, is called a spectrum. And the second part is, can we recombine the components of white light once the prism has separated them? The answer is yes, because from the figure it is clear that first we have placed prism and a white light is incident on the prism, and after the splitting you will get a band of colors on the other side. Now, if we have an attempt to recombine these component colors again into white light, we need to place another prism, but that prism should be in an inverted position with respect to the first prism. So, if we place the second prism in an inverted position with respect to the first one, then this band of colors or spectrum of colors recombine, and on the other side of the inverted prism you will get a white light which can be obtained on a screen. Next question, explain the following terms used in relation to defects in vision and the correction provided by them. So, first one is astigmatism. So, what do you mean by astigmatism? It is a defect of vision, isn't it? So, the inability of our eyes to focus light in both vertical as well as horizontal lines is called as astigmatism. And how is astigmatism caused? It is caused due to the varying curvature of the lens both vertically as well as horizontally. And how can we correct astigmatism? They can be corrected by using cylindrical lenses. Next one is bifocal lenses. How is it related to defects in vision? It is because bifocal lens is used to correct some defect of vision. That is, there is a defect of vision called as presbyopia, isn't it? So, to correct a presbyopic eye, we use a bifocal lenses. From the word itself, you will be clear that bifocal means two focal, isn't it? So, there will be both a concave as well as a convex lens that is joined together. So, a bifocal lens will contain the upper as concave and the lower as a convex surface. So, the presbyopia arises with age, isn't it? So, in such a case, we will be using bifocal lenses to correct presbyopic eye. Moving on to the next question. A convex lens made of glass forms a sharp image on the screen for a particular position of an object with respect to the lens. A human eye lens is also a convex lens, but it can form sharp images on the retina of eye for different positions of objects. Explain why. We know that in this question, both cases convex lens is given, but there is a difference. One is a convex lens and another one is a convex lens, but it is present in case of our human eye. So, when we take a normal convex lens that will be made of glass, which is having a fixed focal length. So, for a particular position of the object, it will be having a particular image on the screen in a particular position. But in case of human eye lens, what happens? There are ciliary muscles which can change the focal length of the human eyes. Or in other words, we can say human eye lens has the ability to change the focal length to form sharp images of the object at different positions, and this particular property is known as accommodation of eye. So, second partition of the question is, name 3 phenomena of light responsible for the formation of rainbow in the sky. Rainbow is one of the main factors that is very beautiful and that we all like to see, isn't it? But there are certain phenomena related to light which is responsible for it. So, they are mainly atmospheric refraction, dispersion and internal reflection of light. Atmospheric refraction happens here because water droplets in our atmosphere act as tiny prisms and that's why refraction happens. So, dispersion, refraction and internal reflection of light in a component manner contribute to the formation of rainbow in the sky. Moving on to the next question, what is meant by scattering of light? Use this phenomenon to explain why clear sky appear blue and sun appears reddish at sunrise. We know scattering helps us to see most of the phenomena that is present around us. And what do you mean by scattering? It is a phenomenon of spreading of light caused by minute particles in the atmosphere. Which are the minute particles in the atmosphere? It can be dust, smoke, water droplets, etc. And why does the sky appear blue? We know that when we consider the spectrum of light from violet to red, that is VIBGYOR, violet has the least wavelength and red has the most wavelength. So, a blue color which is into the region of lesser wavelength will be scattered more strongly due to its shorter wavelength than colors like red which is having higher wavelength. That's why the sky appear blue because the blue color of sunlight will be scattered more strongly due to its shorter wavelength than colors like red. And why does sun appears reddish at sunrise? Can be explained by using the phenomenon of scattering of sunlight. You know that at sunrise, sun will be near the horizon. The sun will look almost reddish because of the property of red color. We know that for red color, the wavelength is highest when compared to blue light. So, the red color will be least scattered and it is received by our eye and it appears to come from the sun. So, the sun appears to be reddish at the time of sunrise. So, by using the phenomenon of scattering, we will be able to discuss how the clear sky appears blue as well as sun appears reddish at sunrise. From this particular figure, you will be able to infer the reddish appearance of sun at sunrise due to the scattering of the light. Moving on to the next question, a star appears slightly higher than its actual position in the sky, illustrated with the help of a label diagram. So, we know that the refractive index of different layers of atmosphere is different. So, the gradual change in the refractive index of different layers of atmosphere will be varying according to the atmospheric conditions and this contribute to atmospheric refraction. So, when starlight enters the atmosphere, it gets refracted continuously as it passes from one layer of atmosphere to the other. So, the higher level of air will act as a rarer medium while the dense air near the surface of earth act as a denser medium. So, from rarer medium to denser medium, there is a shift. So, the atmosphere will bend the starlight towards the normal. We know that when a ray of light passes from a rarer medium to a denser medium, then the ray of light will be bent towards the normal. The same situation happens here. The atmosphere will be bent the starlight towards the normal. As a result, the apparent position of the star is slightly different from its actual position. As you can infer from the figure, the star will appear slightly higher or above than its actual position in the sky due to this atmospheric refraction and the change in the refractive index of different layers of atmosphere. Next question, what do you mean by the term power of accommodation of human eye? How does it help a person to see nearby as well as distant objects clearly? So, the power of accommodation of human eye means it is the ability of our eye lens to adjust the focal length to form the sharp image of the objects at varying distances on the retina. So, To adjust the focal length, we need the help of ciliary muscles. That is, suppose when we see the nearby objects, the ciliary muscles will contract and thus the thickness of eyelids will increase. So, the eyelids become thicker and as a result, focal length of the eyelids will decrease. As a result, a clear and sharp image of the nearby object is formed on the light sensitive screen of eye, that is retina. And when we see the objects which is distant, what happens to the ciliary muscles? These ciliary muscles become relaxed and thus the eyelids or the convex lens of our eyes will become thinner and consequently the focal length of the lens will increase. So, the parallel rays coming from the distant objects will be focused on the retina and the object is seen clearly to us. So, the accommodation power of the eye helps a person to see both nearby as well as distant objects clearly. Next question, what is the cause of dispersion of white light when passing through a prism? The second part of the question is, a glass prism is able to produce a spectrum when white light passes through it, but a glass slab does not produce any spectrum. Explain why is it so? The first part, we need to find what is the cause of dispersion of white light when it passes through a prism. We know that prism has non-parallel surfaces and the refractive index of material of prism is different for different colors. We know that when white light passes through a prism, on the other side we get spectrum of light or VIBGYOR or a band of 7 colors, isn't it? So, the refractive index of the material of prism is different for this different 7 colors and these 7 component colors will have different speeds in this prism. That's why there is dispersion of white light when passing through the prism. And the non-parallel surfaces of prism also contribute to the dispersion of white light when it passes through a prism. And second important fact is that a glass prism is able to produce spectrum when white light is passed through it. But when we pass white light through a glass slab, do we get any spectrum? The answer is no. Why is it so? Because for dispersion to occur, there are certain conditions to be satisfied. The first condition is that the refracting surfaces must be inclined to each other, just like in a prism. But what is in case of a rectangular glass slab? In case of rectangular glass slab, you can see that the refracting surfaces are not inclined but they are parallel to each other. So, the dispersion can't occur. And we can consider rectangular glass slab as equivalent to two identical prism which is in inverted position with respect to each other. So, the deviation and the dispersion produced by the second inverted prism is equal and opposite to that produced by the first prism. Therefore, there will not be either dispersion nor deviation, that is second inverted prism recombines the white color finally from the band of colors. So, the white light which is finally formed will be parallel to the incident ray again and will undergo only lateral displacement. So, in case of rectangular glass slab, you know that the emergent ray will be having parallel to the incident ray, but there occurs a lateral shift. But when the white light passes through a glass prism, what happens is the white light will split into a band of colors. Another important question is, what is dispersion of white light? What is the cause of such dispersion? Draw a diagram to show the dispersion of white light by a glass prism. To understand this question, we need to find what we mean by a prism and what are its properties. Prism is a three-dimensional solid object in which two ends are identical. It is a combination of the flat faces, identical bases and equal cross sections. So, the face of prisms are parallelograms or rectangles without the bases. And the bases of the prism could be triangle, square, rectangle or any n-sided polygon. So, what do you mean by dispersion of white light? We can define dispersion of white light as splitting of white light into 7 constituent colors when it is passed through a prism. So, when the white light is passed through a glass prism, it splits into a spectrum of colors, that is VIBGYOR. And in this process, the white light split into its constituent colors, which can be termed as dispersion. So the particular figure denotes that when white light passes through the glass prism, the dispersion happens, and on the other side you get the band of Vibgyor colors. So when the white light is passing through the prism, we know the final result is that a spectrum of 7 colors is formed. But how is it formed? The prism only acts as a medium for the separation of 7 colors. So when white light falls on the glass prism, refraction takes place. Since the wavelength of different components of light is different and the frequency is constant, each component gets deviated by a different angle due to the difference in the velocity in the glass medium. So the different components of light, that is violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange and red, that is each individual color has different wavelength and they go through a different angle inside the glass prism or bend or deviate in a different angle. So the red color, which is having the maximum wavelength, will deviate the least and forms the upper part of the spectrum, whereas violet, which is of the least wavelength, will deviate the most. So the different colors of light bend through different angles with respect to the incident ray as they pass through a prism. So the red light bends the least while the violet bends the most. So the rays of each color emerge along different paths and become distinct, and this gives rise to a spectrum or a band of 7 colors. So the next question is, what is nearsightedness and how this defect of eye can be corrected? You know, nearsightedness means the condition in which the eyes are not able to see far off objects clearly. So this defect of vision is also called as myopia. So myopia is a defect of vision in which the person can see nearby objects clearly but can't see the distant objects clearly, which is formed in the retina. But in case of myopia, instead of forming the image on the retina, the image is formed in front of the retina. For a myopic person, the far point will be nearer than the infinity. And why does a myopic defect happen? It can happen to multiple reasons. It can be due to the increase in the curvature of our eyelids or increase in the length of the eyeball. So how can we correct a myopia or a myopic eye? We know that for a myopic person, instead of the image forming on the retina, from the figure you can infer the image is formed in front of the retina. So we have to use some lens so that the object and the image is formed accordingly, that the image is formed correctly on the retina instead of forming in front of the retina. So for that you can use a concave lens of suitable power. If you use a concave lens of suitable power, it can bring back the image to the retina and the defect can be correct. And what was the specialty of this concave lens? Concave lens are the diverging lens. So as you can see from the figure, we can use a concave lens, which is also a diverging lens, which can bring back the image to the retina itself. Thus, a myopic eye suffering from nearsightedness can be corrected by using a concave lens. Second part of the question is, the far point of a myopic person is 80 cm in front of the eye. What is the nature and power of the lens required to correct the problem? So you are given V, that is the image distance as minus 80 cm. So U is taken as infinity or minus infinity. So the far point of myopic person is 80 cm in front of the eye. Since it is in front of the eye, it is said as V is minus 80 cm and U is taken as minus infinity. The focal length is considered to be from the formula 1 by V minus 1 by U equals 1 by F, that gives the lens formula. So we are substituting for the different quantities, that is we need to find F. We have two quantities, one is V and U. So if we substitute in the following equation 1 by V minus 1 by U gives 1 by F, then you will get, that is 1 by V is denoted by 1 by minus 80 minus 1 by minus infinity gives you 1 by F. So 1 by minus 80 minus 1 by minus infinity gives minus and minus plus equals 1 by f. So if you get a quantity or numerical value as 1 by f, what you will take? You can take it as f equals minus 80, isn't it? You take the reciprocal. 1 by infinity simply means 0, isn't it? So you can simply equate 1 by minus 80 equals 1 by f. So to get f, you take the reciprocal and you will get f equals minus 80 centimeter. But the standard unit is meter, so we convert it to meter and you will get f equals minus 0.80 meter. You are also asked to find the power of the lens, isn't it? So what is the relation between power of the lens and focal length? It is power equals 1 by focal length in meter. We have already converted the focal length in terms of meter. So it's pretty easy. So P equals 1 by f, that is 1 by minus 0.8 meter, and you will get minus 1.25 d or diopter, which is the SI unit of power of lens. So you get P equals minus 1.25 d. So a negative sign will indicate that it is a concave lens. Make a diagram to show how hypermetropia is corrected. The near point of a hypermetropic eye is 1 meter. What is the power of the lens required to correct this defect? Assume that the near point of the normal eye is 25 centimeter. So we know that the near point of the normal eye is 25 centimeter, whereas the far point is considered to be infinity. So what is the speciality of a hypermetropic eye? In case of this defect of vision, instead of the image forming on the retina, it will be formed behind the retina. And hypermetropia is also known as farsightedness, in which we can't see the nearby objects clearly. So, to bring back the image in the point at the utmost point of the retina itself, instead of forming the image behind the retina, we use a correction lens. And which is a correction lens? That is indeed a convex lens. We know that a convex lens is a converging lens and it will be able to bring back the image correctly to the retina itself. And thus, the hypermetropic person will be able to see the nearby objects more clearly by the use of a convex lens. So, the second part of the question is regarding a problem, that is, what is the power of lens required to correct the defect? Assume that the near point of the normal eye is 25 centimeter. So, from the given quantities, you need to find the power of the lens. So, what are the given quantities in case of the question that we need to understand? So, from the question you can understand that u equals minus 25 centimeter. That is, the object distance is given as minus 25 centimeter. And what is v? That is the image distance. It is given as 1 meter. So, the image distance we can take as minus 1 meter. And when we convert into centimeter, we get 100 centimeter. Since the u is given in 25 centimeters, we convert the other quantity also in terms of centimeter. And you are asked to find the focal length. So, we need the general lens formula, that is 1 by f equals 1 by v minus 1 by u, where v equals the image distance and u equals the object distance. We are already find what do you mean by the u and v. So, u is also given and v is also given. So, when we substitute in the following equation, we can get 1 by f by solving it mathematically. So, for v we substitute minus 100 and for u we substitute minus 25. So, the next step will be 1 by f equals 1 by minus 100 minus 1 by minus 25. So, minus and minus becomes plus and you get 1 by f equals 1 by 100 plus 1 by 25. So, now we need to take the LCM of 100 and 25 and you will get it as 100 in the denominator, and to make it same in the numerator section, we need to multiply it by 1, and for the 1 by 25 we multiply it by 4 in the numerator. So, you will get 1 by f equals minus 1 plus 4 by 100, which gives you 3 by 100. So, 1 by f gives you 3 by 100. So, what will be f in that case? You need to take the reciprocal, and now it is in case of the centimeters. But to find the power, we need to find f in terms of meters. So, when we convert it into meters, instead of 100 by 3, centimeter, you will get it as 1 by 3 meter. So now you are asked to find the power of the lens, isn't it? So how will you find the power of lens? The formula is power is the reciprocal of focal length in meters. You have already found out focal length in meters, that is 1 by 3. So we substitute instead of focal length as 1 by 3. So you would get P equals 1 by F or P equals 1 by 1 by 3, which gives you the final answer as 3D. What does this D represent? D means the SI unit of power of lens, that is diopter. You can see P equals 3 diopter, which takes a positive sign. So positive sign for power of lens means that is a convex lens, or it is also called as a converging lens. We have already found that to find correction for a hypermetropic eyes, we use convex lens, isn't it? So we have already verified it, but by using the formulas and by using the mathematical calculations, again it is being clear. So the next important question is a relevant one, that is to explain the human eye functioning detailed with the help of a diagram. So when you draw the diagram, you must be able to mark all the important parts that is helpful in the description of the eye. So what do you mean by an eye or human eye? So we can term human eye as an optical device, but it is a natural one. So a natural optical device through which we can see the objects around us is called as an eye. And what is this image formed on eye? There is a light sensitive screen on the eyes called as retina. That is what you can see in the particular figure. So retina is a place where the images are formed and inverted and real images are formed on the retina. So other important parts of eyes are iris. As you can see from the figure, iris is a dark muscular diaphragm and it controls the size of the pupil. And the pupil is a black opening between the aqueous humor and the lens. Lens means the eye lens. So since the light does not get reflected from it, it is appearing as a dark one. The amount of light entering our eye is controlled by the size of the pupil. For example, when you see a bright light and when you see a dim light, the size of the pupil is what? That changes. So in case of dim light, it opens up completely through the iris, but when it is bright light, we naturally shut down our eyes to some extent. Why is it so? It's because the pupil is shutting down or it is becoming very small during that time. So pupil is that part of eye which regulates the amount of light controlling our eyes. So next important one is the cornea or the aqueous humor. So acting as lens, this provides the refraction for light rays entering the eye. The cornea is a very thin membrane which is covering the surface of our eyeball, and it is through this cornea that the light enters our eyes. And what is the function of this aqueous humor which is present? You can see this aqueous humor is present between the cornea, which is a thin membrane covering the eyeball surface, and it is the aqueous humor is present between this cornea and the eye lens. And it is just like a gelatinous fluid, and it is also transparent. And what is the main functioning of these ciliary muscles? We have already dealt with that. Ciliary muscles helps in power of accommodation of our eyes, isn't it? They help the eye lens to adjust its focal length, isn't it? So these muscles hold the eye lens in the vertical position and change the focal length of the eye lens so that finally sharp images are formed. For example, when we see a nearby object, these ciliary muscles contract, isn't it? And thus the focal length will decrease and we are able to see the object clearly. What in case if we see a distant object? These ciliary muscles become relaxed and focal length also increases, as well as the eye lens also become thinner, and thus we see far off objects clearly. So this is ciliary muscles which play a very important role so that our eye lens have the ability to adjust the focal length and have the accommodation of power. The next one or the most important one is retina, which is called as the light sensitive screen of our eye on which the image is formed. So it is on this retina that the image is formed and we see the things. In case of our eyes, an inverted image is being formed and it is also real images, isn't it? That's why we can obtain it on a screen also. So, retina is a very important part of our eye and it is equivalent just like the photographic film in case of a camera. So, it contains of rods as well as cones, which are the light sensitive cells which is present inside the retina. So, we have already said rods and cones are the light sensitive cells in the retina, isn't it? But they have different functions. In case of the cells in the retina which are light and color sensitive, there are differences between rods and cones. When we consider rods, they respond to the intensity of light, whereas cones respond to the color. When we say, according to the mathematics, there are about 125 million rods and cones in case of the retina. So, these cells will generate signals and these signals are generated and transmitted to the brain through the optical nerves. And the brain will process the information and through these electrical signals, finally it gives an erect image to us in the case of retina. So, finally the images are formed and once the erect images are formed, finally when they reach the retina, they are being inverted. So, to see the nearby as well as distant objects, ciliary muscles will modify the curvature and finally it leads to focal length change also. So, the parallel rays coming to the eyes will get finally focused on the retina. And what is the main function regarding the retina? It is a light sensitive screen. So, the light sensitive screen finally forms the images which are inverted and real images. So, in between they may be formed in another positions, but finally they may be formed as inverted and real images that is formed in case of retina. So, these are the main parts regarding the eye that contribute to the natural functioning of eye. So, another important question is, what is refraction? Explain refraction through a prism along with a neat diagram. So, refraction is a phenomenon that is happening due to the light. And how does it happen? When light enters from one medium to another, there is a change in the direction of light and that contributes to the phenomenon of refraction. So, light will bend as it travels from one medium to another or it has a change in direction of light. This change in direction of light or bending of light as it passes from one medium to another is called as refraction. There are many phenomena that is related to refraction, just like the rainbow, the twinkling of stars, etc. are certain consequences of refraction. So, when light travels from one optical medium to another, the refraction happens. And why this refraction happens? Because there is difference in optical density of the two media. So, the refraction degree depends upon the wavelength of the light. So, for different light of different wavelength, the refraction also differs. So, the speed of light in different media varies inversely with the refractive medium. For example, we have the main formula as n equals c by v, where n means refractive index and v means speed of the light in the medium. So, from that particular formula itself, it is clear that speed of light in one media is inversely proportional to the refractive index of that media. So, for a particular medium, if refractive index is more, speed of light in that medium will be less and vice versa. So, now we need to understand how refraction happens through a prism. For that, when a ray of light passes through a glass prism, we already know dispersion happens, isn't it? Just like that, refraction also happens. But here, the bending happens twice. As you can see from the figure, first a ray of light is being entering, that is AB. So, it is the incident ray. So, from here, from the air, this particular incident ray is entering to the another medium, that is glass or the prism. So, from air to glass interface, there is the first refraction or first bending. And second bending, of course, will be happening on the other side of the prism, where the emergent ray comes, isn't it? That is, from the incident ray that is reaching the prism, inside the prism, there happens the refraction, which is being denoted by DC. And after refraction, you get on the other side the emergent ray, that is refracted by CD. So, at the air glass interface as well as at the glass air interface, there are bending happening. So inside the prism, the real phenomenon happens. When we consider the incident ray and the emergent ray, you can see the emergent ray is deviated by an angle to the direction of the incident ray, and that can be denoted by angle D called as angle of deviation. And what contributes to this angle of deviation? We know that prism has non-parallel surfaces, and the peculiar shape of the prism makes the emergent ray bend at an angle to the direction of the incident ray. So, there is another important factor that we need to consider when we see the prism. That is, a glass prism has two triangular bases and three rectangular lateral surfaces. And the main property regarding the prism is that they are inclined at an angle called as angle of prism. So, the surfaces are inclined to each other. So, from this figure, it is clearly mentioned that a figure in which the prism triangular PQR is being placed and it is kept on the base QR, that is PQR, in which the base is QR. As we have said, ray of light AB is incident on the face PQ, so AB is the incident ray. So, whenever you are asked in such a question, it is very important that you clearly label what is the incident ray, what is the refracted ray, and what is the emergent ray, as well as angle of prism and angle of deviation. So, when the ray of light passes through the prism, it bends towards the base of the prism. That is, first it ended from a rarer medium to denser medium, so it bent towards the normal. So, the incident ray AB is incident from rarer medium air to the glass, that is a denser medium. So, it bent towards the normal, that is BN dash, and it goes along the direction BC inside the glass prism. So, inside the glass prism, there is refraction, that is the BC is the refracted ray of light, and it bent towards the base QR of the prism. So, when the ray of light BC travel in the glass prism comes out into air, at point C, refraction takes place again, that is the second bending takes place. So, since the ray BC is going from glass to air, that is from a denser medium to rarer medium, it bends away from the normal MC and goes along the direction CD in the form of emergent ray. So, there is incident ray, refracted ray as well as emergent ray.